Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Well, it's very good to be with you all here tonight in this virtual space, the space of mind, space of the heart, to share some words of Dhamma. Disciples of the Buddha have been gathering for many a moon, on the moon, for just this purpose, to take joy and share in thoughts of the Dhamma, ideas of Dhamma, words of Dhamma. We're carrying on a very ancient tradition, thinking together about the Dhamma and delighting in it together, building our community of Dhamma. Well, I'm personally very grateful to have a chance to speak with the Uposatha community tonight, the growing Uposatha community, the web of Dhamma followers that are coming together around this upwelling of generosity. I personally am the beneficiary of this upwelling of generosity. I just, this evening, am at the very end of a 2.5-week visit with my old friend, Bhante Pamukto, and I'm very grateful to him for making me welcome here. And I'm very grateful to a whole web of people who have generously provided a very comfortable stay for a monk here. There's Jonathan and Carolyn, who have provided me personally with lots of delicious food while I've been here, and have been providing a space for Bhante Pamukto to offer live Dhamma-related events, meditation sessions, and Dhamma talks and conversations. I'm grateful to him too for not filling the place with furniture and making it a kind of combination bachelor pad sala. It's just a sala. There's no furniture other than meditation cushions and furniture and a Buddha Rupa and altar. It's a nice space for a sala, a traditional meditation hall. I'm grateful to neighbors who are also supporters of Bhante Pamukto, who have given me a place to stay. Sandy and Donna, who just at the drop of a hat, when the idea was mentioned of me coming, said, "Oh, stay in our place. We're going to be away for a couple of weeks." And not even knowing me, trusted that a monk would take good care of their place, be a responsible house sitter. We'll see what they say when they get back, but I hope it'll be okay. I'm confident it'll be okay. Alex, a dear new friend who I've gotten a lot closer during this visit simply through his acts of generosity of offering food and thinking about what I needed. Those gave us a lot of opportunity to interact and to speak. And I discovered something interesting that I'm not sure Bhante Pamukto is aware of, which is on a day when he was away, when he was off taking care of some business unexpectedly, and I was left to fend for myself, I discovered that actually all of these folks and others I haven't named have been cooperating to make sure the monks get some breakfast. And we don't even need breakfast every day. I knew they were cooperating to see that we had a meal, but they're also informally talking among themselves just to see, all right, were you thinking about giving them something? If not, I'll bring something by. And these conversations themselves are a source of goodness because they're opportunities for cooperation, for friendships to grow, for informal problem solving and friendship, the glue that binds a community. And they're all motivated by generosity, by goodness, by the intention to make something happen for somebody other than oneself. Generosity is the fundamental ground, the foundation of my topic this evening, which is Nekkhama, renunciation. It's a favorite topic of mine, especially in the Uposatha. It's a very important virtue, a very important quality to cultivate for any follower of the Buddha's teaching, lay followers, monastics, secular meditators who are just interested. I like to talk about it when the opportunity arises, especially because for people coming from a Western background who grew up in non-Buddhist societies, it's probably the least familiar of the central defining Buddhist virtues. For example, the paramis. You find Nekkhama, renunciation. Nekkhama is the Pali word that we translate usually in English as renunciation. You find it in many of the traditional Buddhist lists that help us to memorize the key ideas of the teachings. It's a central quality of the heart and the mind that enables development on the Buddhist path. It's central to the beginnings of the path. It's central to the foundation of the path in lay life, in the training in sila, the fundamental training that all followers of the Buddha are enjoined to undertake. Sila is moral conduct. It's the way of life shaped by the precepts that we just took, by the 5 precepts, the precepts regulating our basic way of living, our living with each other and living with ourselves. How is renunciation the foundation of sila? Well, answering this question, I think, helps us to get at what it really is. And it's important to think about that, again, because it's not something that most of us gathered this evening really grow up with or think about. We get probably all the ideas underlying the actual precepts, like why it's a good idea not to kill, not to steal, not to lie, not to cheat on our spouses, not to get wasted and forget all those other 4 precepts and go ahead anyways. But we might not ordinarily think about what this has to do with renunciation. I invite you to think about it in your own reflections. But for me, it's very bound up with the connection between renunciation and generosity. We need look no further than the golden rule that many of us did grow up hearing about, that we are renouncing our own immediate impulsive interests, our own immediate desires and needs for something better. This is the ground of renunciation, the giving up. I'm going to give up the immediate gratification of a desire, whether it's like lashing out at somebody no matter what happens to them in anger, because that's what my impulses are telling me to do. I mean, that's kind of an obvious one. You probably wouldn't be sitting there, a free person, not in prison, sitting in your apartment if you didn't have that basic level of self-control. But that is a kind of renunciation. And it's important to note that, because we are all, if we're living a basic functional life in society, however tenuous the grip feels at times, you're already a renunciant. You're at the beginning, at least, if you can be a functioning, responsible member of our society. If you've undertaken the precepts and the study of the Dhamma, you've probably got that down. Have you considered, though, this subtle difference in the second precept between stealing, which I think is how the precept was translated in the version I just gave, and what the words actually mean literally, which is, I undertake the precept of not taking what isn't given, of taking only what is given, of passing up what I'm not really sure is meant for me. This is a deepening of the precept. Thinking about that subtle difference, like, I'm not going to steal, meaning I'm not going to knowingly deprive someone else of what is rightfully there. That's good. That's the foundation. But you can take that a little farther. You can be extra careful. You can give up the chance to get something which nobody might mind you getting, just to make sure that you don't transgress somebody else's well-being or sense of safety and security. You see some money lying on the street, it's not stealing to pick that up. But if you don't take it, you know that, well, that wasn't meant for me. Nobody meant to give me that money, and they might be looking for that right now. They might be back in 10 minutes. They might find it if you leave that money there. That's another step. That's renouncing an evening out on the town that you could have had with that money. There's a generosity of spirit in renunciation. The basic idea of generosity is that you are giving up. You're renouncing something that can give you pleasure for someone else. So the basic level of renunciation that I mentioned, that I think we all have, if we're able to take care of ourselves and we're able to live a stable life with other people, that involves impulse control, as I mentioned. It involves delayed gratification, being able to wait to seek something that we want. But it doesn't necessarily involve foregoing something for ourselves so that someone else can have it or enjoy it. That's the next level, and that's where generosity starts to get us. That's what generosity means. There's a open-handedness to generosity, an extension of oneself to others. The joy that you give to someone else by the good thing that you're doing for them, that's enough. You've renounced using whatever you've given for your own joy, your own pleasure. This is the foundation of renunciation. The word itself connects to other English words we're familiar with. When you renounce, it sounds a little bit like you announce something, or you pronounce something, you make a pronouncement or announcement. That's making an assertion, stating something you hold to be hopefully true, or you want others to think is true. There's denouncing someone or something. That's putting it down, derogating it, saying it's bad. But renunciation is something different. It's not either of those. And it's worth noting that, because a lot of us get the message along the way that renunciation is a denial of pleasure, a denial of the body often, not getting what you want because you'll enjoy it. To my mind, that's not renunciation. It's a kind of asceticism, And I mention this by the name asceticism specifically because ascetic is often used as a translation of bhikkhu or even samana, which is what we do. When you become a monk, male or female monk, you renounce, in a way I'll talk about in a moment, but you don't denounce your body, you don't denounce your physical life. Asceticism is a kind of mortification of the body. The Buddha, in one of the most profound suttas, Majjhima Nikaya 16, lists the amazing ascetic practices he undertook soon after he went forth into what we call the holy life, the life of a monk, when he was seeking the way, seeking the path to freedom. He observed the way that renouncers pursued the path around it. And at that time in ancient India, what they did was they undertook ascetic practices. There were many competing about ideas about Nekkhama and liberation and the path to enlightenment, and many of them involved extreme ascetic practices. And the Buddha pursued them harder than anyone ever had before. And if you're interested, they're listed and described in graphic detail in Majjhima Nikaya 16, to such a degree that some of the things he did actually are you will not hear them being talked about very often in Dhamma talks and monasteries. They're almost like monks are almost embarrassed to mention them. But I'm going to trust you with a few of the actual ascetic practices, because I think they make the point that I'm trying to get at. The Buddha would crawl into, I'll mention the fasting practices first. Fasting is not one of the allowed dhutangas, the allowed austerities. We do practice certain austerities, and I'll mention why that's can be a helpful thing for a monk in a moment. But none of them are physically painful, and none of them put one's health or well-being at risk. But the ascetic practices that he undertook did both. He fasted to the point of falling down, that's starving, of almost dying. This is expressed by a conversation that two devas, two spirits, looking down at his body had while he was while he was lying there, at the edge of death. The conversation had them looking at him saying, "What is this ascetic Gautama doing? Is he dying?" And the other said, "Yes, he does seem to be dying." And what did the first one say? "Well, no, he's not actually dying. This is just the way these ascetics live." He didn't die. He came to a realization that it was time to end the fast. But before I get to that, let's consider another favorite ascetic practice of mine from this list, which is almost never described because it's just so extreme. He would sneak into the cow sheds to eat the feces of the cows and drink the urine of the new calves. He drew the line at the adult cows. It's gross, but when you read it in the Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 16, you'll see that there's a reason he's explaining in graphic detail the extent to which he pursued austerities, right to the edge of death. The reason is that it didn't work. It didn't bring him closer to his goal. After those angels stood over him, looking at his dead body, saying, "It's interesting how these ascetics dwell. Well, this is going to die." The Buddha realized this does not work. This is not the way. He decided, okay, I'm going to try a different path. This rejection of the body is not the way to go. I'm not destroying my bad karma. It doesn't work that way. So he took some handfuls of rice. I won't go through the whole story, but he realized that what made more sense, what would bring him towards peace, was not denouncing his physical body and physical well-being, but moving towards peace. Meditating. Moving towards the jhana, the samadhi of a quiet, peaceful mind. And when he had made that realization, he actually went into a deep state of meditation. Circled back to that as well. But he had to go deeply into asceticism to see that actually this is not the way. And I encourage you to really reflect on that as you undertake your own meditative practices, because many of us in the West come to Buddhist practice through meditation. We find a lot of, we discover all kinds of wonderful things when we try it out. We might experience ourselves in ways that we never have, discover things about ourselves we never suspected. We might feel a kind of calm or peace or moments of it, moments of quiet or moments of exaltation that we never experienced before. And it can be quite exciting. But that excitement itself can lead us into a kind of acquisitiveness, a kind of goal orientation to get more, deeper, further towards those positive potentials that we sense. Just as the Buddha, before he was the Buddha, thought that if he just went a little farther with the ascetic practices, he would break through and get beyond all the pain that he was imposing on himself. But renunciation is something more natural. It is not a movement towards, not a pursuit of some acquisition. It's a letting go. That's what we're learning to do in meditation. Ultimately, meditation itself is a renunciatory practice. And this is something to investigate. You can even ask yourself the question, well, what does he mean? How can I meditate in a way that is renunciation? What do the two have to do with each other? Investigating that can be fruitful, I think. When we renounce, we're letting go of something. And specifically, we are letting go of something for ourselves. I come back to the idea of generosity. There can be a kind of generosity in the way that we meditate. It can start as a generosity to ourselves, but it emerges that it's for something bigger than ourselves, that we're practicing meditation. We're cultivating something bigger than our individual selves. Along with coming to meditation through, along with coming to Dhamma practice, to coming to Buddhism through meditation, many of us in the West come to it through kind of philosophical ideas. We get excited about the ideas behind the Buddha's teaching, the Four Noble Truths. It's like, aha, that set of ideas makes sense. It has a kind of intellectual power. I think for those of us of an especially philosophical kind of temperament, we get excited about the idea of ideas like not self or impermanence. These are ideas that we do not have to approach philosophically to get to the bottom of. And indeed, at some point, we're going to have to set that aside. We're going to have to set aside the philosophical reflection to get to the depth of the deepest ideas of Dhamma. And the idea of not self is one of the central concepts that we also will have to undertake in completely non-philosophical. We'll have to investigate in a kind of non-philosophical way. And it turns out that this is that way. Like what I'm talking about is that way. We are practicing in meditation a kind of enlargement of our circle of concern beyond our individual desires, our own immediate preferences for what we want. In just the same way, when we practice generosity, we're enlarging our circle of concern beyond our own immediate benefit. We are extending who we care about to whatever the target of our generosity is. It can be people around us. It can be the monk down the street. It might be people you don't know. When we donate money to a cause that we care about, when we do it with an open heart, we're extending ourselves to people we don't even know. One of the most powerful and beautiful images of the Buddha that we repeat over and over in our ceremonies and our reflections in the Buddha is that the Buddha is a being of boundless compassion, infinite compassion, compassion for all beings. And if we put that in kind of modern terms, well, we come to not self. He's extending the boundaries of himself, not just to his family. You know, all of us understand to some degree what it is to care as much about your family as for yourself. Beyond his circle of friends, beyond his tribe, beyond his town, beyond his state, beyond his city, beyond humanity, to all beings. That is, well, it's not the end of renunciation because it has no end. It goes on forever. That's what boundless means. So meditation can be a path to that as well. Anatta, not self, is just another name for that. And I encourage you to reflect on this if you are a meditator and that's kind of your main way in, because it'll help you avoid some of the most common kind of pitfalls and traps that generally follow from meditating with a goal. I'm going to get to this particular thing for myself. It's not something to be kind of tight and down on yourself about. It's fine to want peace. And it's fine to want understanding. Those motivations are, we wouldn't do anything if we weren't personally motivated. But it's a personal motivation towards something bigger than ourselves. And if we understand that, well, that can be helpful. I offer those words for your reflection.
Pandamayam Dhammakataya Sarukaranda Dhammase Sadhu Sadhu Sadhu